So when you talk about those strongly formed views already in communities, can you give a specific example, anyone you want within the four, of a change that these communities want that's been ignored by governments, that the voice needs to raise and give a proper platform because it has been ignored?
Yeah, so when I was in Fitzroy Crossing last week, obviously this is a community that is still reeling from pretty terrible floods that affected the community in the region a few months ago. Now, they were talking about challenges for their young people in the communities, but it wasn't through the lens of youth crime or problematic youth. What they were saying was that was a symptom. The cause was the lack of decent, safe, secure housing. The issue was not necessarily a youth crime issue, it was a lack of housing issue. So the kids were out in the streets and not in decent housing. So this is the difference, though. This is where when you
Mm.
actually you stop listening to media sensationalizing a lot of these issues, you actually understand and you listen to people in the communities. They're saying we get the housing right. That's going to go a long way to actually fixing
Mm.
some of these other symptoms that we see in our communities. That is the feedback, that is the input that you will hear more when we have a voice in place.
We've got a minister, though, right now who wants to improve outcomes for First Australians right now. So that issue, wouldn't you or the community be telling her the issue and be sorting through that now? How does that change when there's a voice?
Well, we're getting that unfiltered advice directly from the communities themselves. We're not talking to other organisations that have got other priorities. You simply got, as I said, the people that turned up to the conversations that we had through the Kimberley had no problems whatsoever speaking very straight, very direct, with complete
Mm.
honesty, without any other agenda about the issues that we're facing their communities. And certainly no politics involved. It wasn't about political partisanship. It was solely focused on those issues that affected Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on a day-to-day basis. That's what's missing at the moment. We're not having that. We're not having that frank conversation, and we're not having that through a voice that has a constitutional guarantee that doesn't have to worry about whether the next government's going to, take their view or not. They're going to have continuity and stability to give that fearless and frank advice about the issues that have a real impact on a day-to-day basis. That's the big difference here.
But you'd still wouldn't you be raising this issue now? I mean, you know about it. I'm sure you can have contact with the minister's office. I mean, we want to fix that sort of thing as soon as possible, right?
Well, Tom, it's easy for me. I mean, I can, I've got contacts and so forth through the work that I do. But what we've been talking about for a very long time, it's not about me. It's about the people out there in the remote communities. It's about the people that their voices aren't being heard. Their voices are being ignored. They talked about it repeatedly over the last week, saying that, out of sight, out of mind in remote Australia, not necessarily the big vote winner when it comes to elections, but when it comes to the quality of life for their families in their communities, this is having huge impact in communities across the country. They're the people that we want to be listening to, and it has absolutely been our position that we want those community level people on the voice, speaking from the direct day-to-day experience of what's happening out there on the ground.
Okay. When we talk about this being enshrined in the Constitution, so a voice in place indefinitely, let's cast forward to 20 years. Let's be glass half full and say closing the gap's going really well. A lot of outcomes are very similar for Indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders and the rest of the nation. Would it be logical then for the voice to be able to tackle whatever it wanted and whatever issue it concerned? I know Australia Day is one that's always popped up there, whatever else there might be. It would move on to other issues. Would you assume that's how it would work?
Well, firstly, I think that it's a highly optimistic glass half full. Some of the targets that we're talking about here are 70-year targets, so we're talking a long way out here. But there is a place for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to be involved in some of the complex challenges that are facing our community more broadly. Take land management, and the country has been devastated by fire and flood over recent years. It's only now, after all of that time of really not having the voices of Indigenous people involved in these kind of more broader general issues for the country, Are we now talking about adopting Indigenous fire management practices, for example, in the way that we manage landscapes and reduce the risk of catastrophic bushfires that have affected all Australians? So I think the idea that we just do closing the gap, and that's the useful purpose of the voice done and dusted. There are many challenges facing Australians that are coming down the pipe, some that we can't even contemplate sitting here now, that the wisdom and experience that Indigenous people can bring to bear, advising parliaments, and parliaments still making their own decisions about these issues, but providing that wisdom and expertise on some of these really important issues, I think is a good thing for the nation.
Dean Parkin, appreciate your time today. Thank you.